The June 15th, 2026 Auburn City Council workshop would be called to order. We have a single agenda item this evening, the first workshop on the mobile home rent stabilization ordinance. Background, the council previously enacted a moratorium on lot rent and fee increases, and during this period has been considering a regulatory ordinance. There's a draft ordinance before the council this evening. That ordinance has been drafted based on the discussions during the moratorium, the public forum, various discussions with stakeholders, and has been vetted by legal. I think before we start in substantively, a couple scheduling issues. So we're going to have the initial workshop this evening. This will be on the agenda for workshop at the next regular meeting in 2 weeks. At that workshop, we'll have a advocacy representative from the mobile home park residents, and one from the mobile home park owners have been invited to present their thoughts on the draft ordinance. And unfortunately, Councilor Randall's unable to be here tonight, but she has some policy thoughts, and she'll bring those forward at the next meeting, which she will be able to attend. As we start through this, I think that the first item of discussion is really the purpose and the scope of the ordinance. In summary, the way the ordinance is drafted, the purpose is to prevent unreasonable rent and fee increases. I think it's important to be clear what it's not. So the ordinance as drafted is not a rent control or a housing subsidization ordinance. It does not set base rents for either lots or certain fees, and it'll apply certain objective standards to the method by which fees and rent can be increased. So I guess I'll stop there for a moment, because I think it's important to make sure that we hear the thoughts from the council about the purpose and scope. This is fairly narrowly tailored for this purpose, and it will drive, I think, the context of the discussions going forward. So I would entertain any thoughts or questions that the council might have on the stated purpose in the ordinance. Okay, not seeing it.
Oh, I was just going to say that I just wanted to thank staff for putting this together. I think this is really great, and there are some comments I'll have later, but I think overall this is really great, so thanks.
Councilor Cowan?
I'll echo Councilor Duvall's comments. I like the scope. I think it addresses the major concerns that we've been hearing, and doesn't create precedents that may be challenging for us to then continue down for other types of rental. So,
any other thoughts on the purpose and scope? If not, we'll move on. I guess we'll just work through the sequentially through the sections in the ordinance. So the second section is definitions. I'd ask if there are any questions relative to definitions, and I would point out that I want to make sure that all the councilors fully understand the concept of how in this ordinance base rent is built up and the difference with additional fees. So Councilor Duvall.
I just wonder, I have a couple quick things here. So I've been speaking with Councilor Randall a little bit too, but I had these thoughts as well. So The first is, can we add some definitions to this? I think the spaces would be capital improvement. What is a capital improvement versus, and then a couple of other things would be routine versus deferred maintenance. So what differentiates those things within the ordinance?
Yeah, so if you hold that thought for a minute, let's work the definitions that are in there. I had the same conversations with Councilor Randall. She had a number of policy items that she can address at the next meeting, and there were several technical items, including the two things that you just mentioned. So I have a draft amendment that will cover both those items. So let's deal with the definitions that are currently in the draft, and then we can go over the two items that you just mentioned.
Great, thank you.
Council Platt?
Thank you. I had a question under the base rent and additional fee bullets under this section. The CPI, or 5%, whichever is lower, was that chosen by this municipality? Is there precedent in others? Have we seen that model of CPI or 5%, whichever is lower, in other forms of this ordinance across the state?
Yeah, so I think in general, there's several different ways that this has been done. I don't think there's any consensus, especially nationally, about how this works. There's a variety of different models. There's CPI plus, which is CPI plus some defined escalator percentage. So, it might read something like CPI plus 2. There's models that use straight CPI. Some of those use the Social Security Cost of Living Index. Some of them use CPI-U. In this draft, what's called out is the CPI-U rent of primary residence in the northeast section, basically because that has a much closer tie to inflationary pressures related to housing than some of the other standards do. And then, of course, the way this is written, it's a cap. So you have CPI-U or 5%, whichever is lower. So as an example, the way this is currently structured, we have another month to go to understand the full year CPI, but if you took the last 11 months, it's running about 3.75%. So that would be the cap. If, say, for an illustrative example, if that index was 8%, they would be capped at 5% unless they could demonstrate to the board why they should exceed the cap, regardless of what the CPI measurement was.
Thank you. That's a great explanation. I'm not as well educated on the CPI values. My thought, maybe we can get into it later. I know this is really just about the intent of the ordinance and definitions. But does that CPI ever go to 0? Does it ever go to 1%? Are there ever scenarios where that number reads what it reads, but it would produce an overly burdensome cap on these developers? If it's at 0.5%, that could be that could be tough to limit a developer to 0.5% when they wanted to go 1.2%. I understand the 5% cap,
right.
Absolutely.
So
thinking in the other direction.
Yeah, so this particular index has not been 0 or below 0 in the last 10 years. Straight CPI-U nationally was below 0 1 year in the past 20 years. It's very rare that it would be below 0. It's rare that it's exceedingly high, but people remember back in the mid-'80s, we had a couple of years of double-digit 13, 15% inflation rate. So I guess my answer would be, if it's below the 5% cap and it's tied to the inflationary pressures related to housing, I wouldn't see that as unduly burdensome on the mobile home park owner, because that's the inflationary pressure that they would be facing. Other thoughts on definitions, Council Cowan?
Just to follow up on that, my understanding too is that there is a mechanism where a mobile home park owner could come before the board to talk about if they wanted it to be slightly higher. So we built that in as a way to try to address, Councilor Platts, your concerns.
Other questions on definitions? I guess perhaps we have some interested members of the public here. We just want to make sure that everybody sort of understands the construct here. So this is set up with basically two separate fee buckets, if you want to think of it that way. So there's base rent, and base rent's the lot rent, plus it's certain fees such as water, sewer, grounds maintenance, solid waste disposal, that in effect become the base rent. And those could be either presented in a lump sum or they could be itemized separately. Different parks do it different way. Everything else beyond that would be an additional fee. And those would be, as we get into the mechanism here later on in the ordinance, those are treated, additional fees are treated differently than the base rent is. Other questions about definitions? So you have a handout in front of you, as Councilor Duvall pointed out. Councilor Randall raised several questions about definitions, some of which I think are already covered in the ordinance, but there's two pertinent issues, and the first had to do with capital improvements. So you'll see there is a proposed definition of capital expense, which basically means any funds used for capital improvement, because that term's used in the ordinance, and a definition of capital improvement itself. And that definition includes things that are not capital improvements. Deferred maintenance is a really broad term, but to Councilor Duvall's point, the specifics that are called out here would be the things that you would normally think of under deferred maintenance. So I think the action for the council on this is to look at this definition and see if the sentiment of the council is to include such a definition. If so, we'll provide these definitions to legal for review. And at the next workshop, we would have definitions conformed by legal. So the real question in front of the council tonight is the purpose of this definition seem to meet the expectations about what a capital improvement is.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Cowan.
I appreciate the amendment. I'm in favor of including it. I think it's just in the spirit of more clarification and what we're talking about within the ordinance. It seems appropriate to differentiate that, provide these details.
Councilor Platt.
I think it's good. I appreciate the reference to it being capitalized under GAAP principles. I think without that, it's a little wishy-washy. Obviously, it's not, they can't assess the tenants for 100% of the value over 1 year or 2 years. It needs to be depreciated accordingly. I think that's important to highlight.
Councilor Duvall.
Yeah, I just want to, this looks good to me. So yeah, I appreciate your putting it forward.
Okay, so we'll send this on to legal to look at, and then we'll have this redlined in the draft. We'll make a list as we go along of things we need to work on before the next workshop. So the second one had to do with a question that Councilor Randall raised about written findings. And I talked with legal about this, and I think we agreed that the current language that talks about the record being used in appeal would lead to the processes that are set up for the board to include written findings. But there's we were in agreement that there's no harm in actually calling this out in the ordinance. So as you'll see here, there is some proposed language. Again, we'll have legal look at it. This is, for those that have served on the planning board, you'll recognize this is very similar to the type of language that's used for the planning board regarding what the record is that's created during the hearing and the requirement that there be a written finding of fact. So any questions on this item? No? Okay, so we'll, I take that as agreement that we should potentially include this, so we'll treat this as the same way. We'll send this over to legal, have them take a look at it, and have something redlined in the ordinance for the council to look at the next meeting. If we move on from definitions, the next section deals with the board. It calls out some defined membership, the city finance director, the finance director at the Auburn Housing Authority, a resident, and 2 alternates that are residents with expertise in business or financial matters that would sit as the board. A lot of the following paragraphs you'll recognize as sort of boilerplate for the creation of a committee and, you know, how votes are taken and officers. I would particularly call out Section D. And I think we should get some sense of the council on this. Typically, in a committee like this, the detailed processes that will be used aren't contained in the ordinance. They're created by the committee, and in discussion with legal counsel and staff, should the ordinance be enacted and a board be impaneled, both staff and legal counsel will be working with the board to establish the bylaws and processes. I think one of the important reasons for not putting all of that detail in the ordinance is it makes it very difficult to change these processes should they find that they need to be modified as they go along, right? It would take several months, and you'd have to go through 2 readings for the council. All the meetings are public of the board, and the bylaws would be public. So it's the sense of the council that we would proceed in this way, and staff and legal, if there's a board impaneled, will work with them to draft the bylaws and processes. So that would be things like, what type of forms would you use when you filed a petition? What type of information would you have to have? What the timelines would be for them to meet and render a decision? All those types of processes. So is the council good with that approach? We did have in here something that's not contained in all of our committees, and that is an annual report to the council, given the substantive policy issues that are involved, that the board report annually to the council on or before January 31st, so we'd be assuming in January of each year they would come forward with an annual report about the activities of the board and any thoughts or feedback they might have on the ordinance and how it's working. Any questions about the board section? Councilor Duval.
Yeah, I have one question about the composition. I just want to make sure that we have expertise on housing in there. I know we have the Auburn Housing Authority finance person. I assume that person knows the landscape of what the city needs and what the people of the city need vis-a-vis housing.
So I give you my thoughts on this. I understand the purpose, and there's been some discussion that perhaps someone that has housing experience, especially related to housing stability and housing affordability, should be on the board. I would remind the council that the way the ordinance is structured, those are not topics that the board would be able to entertain, right? You have a defined objective process, which is really a business case financial assessment, and it would not be appropriate for the board to be using that process and then saying the outcome isn't affordable or it's going to lead to housing instability. I had a discussion with legal about this today, and they confirmed that that would not be an action that could likely be sustained by the city should there be an appeal. So I'm not opposed to someone with those experiences, but I think the driver for that was to move those concerns into the petition process, which is something that would not be allowable the way the ordinance is currently structured.
Understood. Thank you.
So we can think about that some more if the council wants one member to have housing experience beyond the housing authority. We could certainly discuss that. I don't think it's harmful to the composition of the board, but I just want to make clear that we shouldn't extend that to think that those subjective points would then be within the scope of the determination and findings by the board. Any other questions or thoughts about the board itself? So the next section is base rent and the additional fees and the increase on limitations. So there's a number of more substantive items in this section. So the first is limiting increases to once in a 12-month period, and the way this is set up now, they would be effective on January 1st. I think the important thing is that they're annual. The reason that we have January 1st in here is we have a moratorium that was enacted in early February, and to be fair to all parties, it seemed like setting a hard date by which we would have the first potential increases and then annual increases like that made sense, so that we're not having potential increases. And for the audience, the way ordinances work in Auburn is they would take effect 5 days after final enactment by the council. So, you know, this is sort of accomplishes two things. It prevents immediate filings for increases until January 1st, and it provides basically a 1-year period based on the rates at the time the ordinance was, the moratorium was enacted. Any questions on the period and the cycle? So the next one is a base rent calculation. And the substantive part here is that the base rent, and remember in the definition section that we just talked about, base rent is the lot rent plus fees related to those 4 items: water, sewer, solid waste disposal, and grounds maintenance. That the base rent would be fixed at what it was at the time of the moratorium on February 2nd, and could not be increased until January 1st. There's the additional fees calculation. So this works a little bit differently than the base rent. So the additional fees calculation are also fixed at what they were on February 2nd, 2026. Because increases only take effect on January 1st, there could be no increase in these additional fees between the point of enactment of the ordinance and December 31st. but there would be no allowable additional fees starting January 1 unless a petition was made by the park owner to establish additional fees besides what's in the base rent. And if you were to go back to the definitions, additional fees may be allowed, but the additional fees, there has to be a showing by the park owner that there's actual cost that's commensurate with the fee that's being charged. So in effect, what that would do is prohibit additional fees for which there's no financial impact on the owner. And if there is a financial impact, the fee would be limited to what the actual financial impact is. So any questions on additional fees calculation? Councilor Duval.
I guess I have a question about any additional fees that might actually be in place as of the moratorium. Is there a thought on what happens to those?
Yeah, so the way that this is written, the fees that were additional, things that would come under the scope of additional fees that were in place on February 2nd would be in place until December 31st of this year without increase. Those fees could not continue on beyond January 1st without a finding and establishment of the additional fees by the board. Any other questions on additional fees? So we can move on to the rent, at Section D, the maximum annual increase formula. We briefly touched on this. So part of this is timing, right? Because as you'll see as we go along with the petition, there's notification requirements and there has to be time for the board to act. So the CPI year that would be measured would be the preceding July 1st to June 30th. So we'll take this year, assume there's a ordinance enacted. There wouldn't be any increases till January 1st. Those increases would be based on the CPI from July 1st of 2025 to June 30th of 2026 to allow time for the CPI value to be known, for the petitioner to understand that, decide if they want to file a petition, to file it, have the board act in a timely manner to allow for the notification to the park residents prior to January 1st application of any new fee. And again, this is the lesser of, so it's the CPI or capped at 5%. So any questions on Section D? Section E, this is the petition section. So in effect, what this allows the owner to do is petition the board for an increase beyond the base rent, which could be in excess of CPI. Let's say CPI was 3%, and they wanted to make a case that they should get 3.5% or 4%. They would have to file a petition. If CPI were above the 5%, they would be capped at 5% unless they filed a petition. So this is the petition mechanism, and it's also the increase for additional fees. So that's the fee portion, and then it requires a petition if capital improvements are to be made that are beyond the base rent. And you'll see in the next section in F, it goes along with this. This is the timing. The petition has to be filed by August 1st prior to the January 1 in which the increase would take effect. And that's to give time to know the CPI, make the filing, and for the board to act. As you'll see as we go along, there's some notification requirements that would, we need to leave time for the notification requirements after the board acts, if they approve an increase. So, any questions on E or F? So we'll move on to G, and these are the standards for the petition review. And in here, it's split up into two sections, one related to increases in the base rent or additional fees, and the other for capital improvements. So for the base rent or additional fees, the standard is that they have to demonstrate that there's actual and reasonable operating expenses in excess of the maximum allowable, which would be CPI or the cap, and that those are necessary to maintain the existing level of services to the residents. And they have to have a direct nexus to benefits to the mobile home park residents. And this piece is especially important on additional fees. You can't establish a fee for something, an additional fee for something that you can't demonstrate provides an actual benefit to the residents of the mobile home park. So any question on, before we move on to the capital improvement piece on that section? Okay, so with capital improvements, this is a little more complicated. The financial calculations of this are a little different. So there's several things that have to be demonstrated here. The concept being that if you make capital improvements, those can also lead to a rent increase in the base rent. So the first thing that has to be demonstrated is that the increase is not accounted for in the base rent. So if you go back to the definition we talked about a few minutes ago, it can't be things like routine maintenance or a capital improvement because you never did the required maintenance or on some piece of infrastructure, right? So it can't be accounted for in the base rent. The capital improvement has to have a direct benefit to the mobile home park residents. So a good example, we don't really necessarily have this currently in Auburn, but lots of mobile home parks around the state do, and we could have other parks in the future. Let's say you had a park and it has 40 lots, and the owner decides that they have additional land and they're going to add 40 more lots. They could not raise the base rent for the existing lot holders for the capital improvement to expand the park, because that would have no direct benefit on the current residents. So it has to have a direct benefit to the residents. They have to specify what the total capital outlay will be required. They have to specify the useful life of the capital improvement. And in doing so, they're going to have to use generally accepted accounting principles of the IRS depreciation schedule. So depending on what they're doing, if they're building a building or paving a road, within these schedules, it'll identify the appropriate depreciation schedule, 10 years, 15, 20, whatever it might be. So they have to identify the useful life. They're allowed a total rate of return. This is basically the opportunity cost, right? If you're a mobile home park owner and you're faced with perhaps, let's say, spending $200,000 on a capital improvement, you could not make that capital improvement, go buy equities or a bond or whatever and get a return. That would be the opportunity cost that would be missed. So there's allowance in here for the opportunity cost, and what we've suggested in here is that that's calculated as the prevailing yield on the 10-year U.S. Treasury securities plus 2 percentage points that would be at the time that the application is made. So the financial and the people in the room will know that that changes every day. So it will be whatever it is on the day of the application. There's lots of ways to look at this. This is total return on the balance, right? So if you, let's say that the current treasury rate was 3.5%, you get to 2 points, you get 5.5%. Your return is your total return on the capital outlay, so it's multiplied against the total amount. This is not like an annual percentage rate where the percentage is applied every year. It's applied once in the total. And then once that's defined, it would be divided by the years of useful life. So if you have your, let's say, your $200,000 project, and let's say you get a $8,000 return on it, the $208,000 would be divided by the useful life. Say 10 years, you divide it by 10, and then to determine the lot increase in the lot rent, that would then be divided by the number of licensed lots pursuant to the state statute. So this isn't necessarily the occupied lots. If you have a mobile home park and they have 30 lots and 5 of them are vacant, they can't apply the capital improvement to the 25 people. They have to apportion it over the number of lots that they have. And that would be, again, the number that are specified in the state license for the park. So any questions on the financial provisions related to capital improvements? Council Platt.
Thank you. I like it. I like the limitations on, I guess, the developer's yield on a capital outlay. My only question is on, have we considered, or what thoughts have we put out, just thinking about limiting capital outlay, period. I know here I am saying I don't want to limit developers, but here's a scenario that comes to mind. You've got a private equity firm that, the next iteration of sales of these mobile home parks, eventually it all funnels up to private equity, right? They're the ultimate owners of these things. What if private equity comes in, looks at a parcel, says, I don't want anyone to live here. I'm going to build a gold-plated swimming pool, and everyone can use it. It's the nicest swimming pool in the state, and it's going to cost $10 million, and we're going to have to triple everyone's rent. Nobody can do that. Everyone has to leave. We get our land, we can bulldoze it and put up a hotel. I know that's a crazy thought, but I think private equity has done crazier things. So have we thought about limitations on CapEx into these properties? Because I feel like a savvy developer could put all their tenants out of business with an oversized CapEx project.
Yeah, I think that no, there's no provision in here to limit CapEx. I think that there'd be no limitation on how much money the developer wants to spend. The question would be, since all the capital outlays have to go to the board, the ability for them to demonstrate what the direct benefit to the residents are.
I guess here's a more direct way to put it. Would the board be able to say, of your $10 million gold-plated swimming pool, we determined that only $500,000 of that is a swimming pool and $9.5 million of that is unnecessary gold?
Yes.
Okay, all right, that makes me feel better.
Other questions on the capital piece? Okay, so let's move on to H, which is notice requirements. So here, this will go back to the scheduling we talked about a minute ago. So it requires a minimum of a 90-day notice. The notice has to have the identifying information of the owner and has to identify the increases, if there's more than one, separated by base rent and additional fees, and in the dollar amount and the type of the increase. Then again, that has to be 90 days or more before the effective date, which would be January 1st. Any questions on notice? So the next item is vacancy base rent. So as the ordinance is currently drafted, there's no limitation on base rent whenever a lawful vacancy occurs, and the park owner can set a new base rent. All other provisions would still apply. The base rent could be increased, but they would still have, after that point, all the same caps on the increases in base rent or additional fees. Councilor Duval?
So quick question, clarification and question on this. So if something comes vacant, as owner, I could double the rent on that lot, and that would then rent it, and then that person would have a different base rent from, I mean, obviously everybody has different base rents, but that becomes the value, and there's no governor that limits the amount you can actually increase the base rent on a lot. And the reason I ask is because it seems like the purpose is to maintain an affordable housing source within the community, and being able to just jack the price on a vacant lot. Well, I understand wanting to be able to raise the base rent on something, if what you have just isn't working out. But I think maybe is there space for limits to that?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing I would say is the purpose is not to maintain affordable housing within the community. The ordinance purpose is narrowly defined to be to regulate unreasonable rent and fee increases. So yes, that's the first sentence, but the second sentence actually says mobile home parks represent a source of unsubsidized affordable housing. So if what you say, if we're going to stick by just the first sentence of the purpose, then I think we ought to reconsider that second sentence. Well, I guess we could do that, but I guess I would say that one shouldn't presume that if a lot becomes vacant and the owner increases the base rent, that it automatically means it's not affordable housing, because it's very likely that housing is rapidly escalating in price throughout the community for all different types of housing. So further to your point, there's nothing in here that regulates when a vacancy occurs, the setting of a new base rent. I think that this is a recognition that non-subsidized housing basically exists in the free market economy, and market pressures will dictate what that base rent could be. If a lot becomes vacant and the base rent is raised, any individual that would move in there would have the opportunity to decide whether that was acceptable to them or not. And I would presume that if the base rent's too high to attract renters, then the owner would then rethink what their increase was. But this recognizes that when a vacancy occurs, the market will dictate what the new base rent would be. Council Platt?
Yeah, I would, generally speaking, I would tend to agree with the mayor's sentiments. I understand Councilor Duval's point. If you read the purpose and scope, it obviously does say recognizing mobile home parks as a source of unsubsidized affordable housing, but recognizing what they are, to me, I don't know if that is saying we have to preserve them, in my reading of it. My purpose here is to protect these folks, not to control future actions of the developers. My hope is that actions that this ordinance takes to deal with the status quo, to put guardrails on these property owners for these folks to have more peace of mind. I'm hoping that break in itself, pushing the brakes there in itself, will help preserve unsubsidized affordable housing. The question is, how far are we willing to go? I'm personally not willing to go further than what we have here. I wouldn't want to dictate what would happen in between a legal, lawful vacancy. But I understand what the point you're making. So another good conversation to have, probably.
Councilor Collins?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit closer to Councilor Platts, but share the same concerns Councilor Duvall does. Before the housing crisis, I would have said, yeah, this is absolutely going to be managed by market pressures. And so there, I understand where we're coming from there. I worry a little bit about the fact that the housing crisis has caused all housing to be largely unaffordable. And so I'm just still struggling about that. So I'll look forward to continued conversation in our second workshop. I know this is something that Councilor Randall was concerned about as well. But I guess the final thought that I've kind of come back to is this is a potential component that we could monitor. We're going to have these annual reports, and if needed, there had to be some really high-level governors that could be put in. You recommend, in your case, they could double the rent. They could quadruple the rent if they wanted to, but I think that then they're probably going to leave vacant for a while. So it's just hard to. I tend to lean towards wait and see, but I do want to make sure we've thought about potentially all the ramifications or next steps that we could have in place if needed to take.
And just one additional thought to my point. In the conversations that I've had with constituents and listening to folks speak here in public sessions, to me, the unjust nature of what we're talking about, it's not that rents are doubling or tripling on a vacant lot. It's that the monthly and annual prices are going up for folks who cannot leave. So they are tied to these properties. They cannot leave when their rents go up hundreds or thousands of dollars, their lot rents. If folks have already left, well, they're free of it. Again, we can have another conversation about what role the city council has in overseeing mobile home development, but I think they're two separate issues.
I agree with that. I think absolutely the most important issue is to ensure that those already there in lots that do not have a choice are not being taken advantage of.
Go ahead, Councilor Collins.
Yeah, I mean, I echo that the primary goal is to protect the current residents. I just think we ought to think about, do we want to set, it doesn't have to be 5% for the vacancy base reset, but maybe 50%. I don't know. I would just want to continue that conversation, especially in light of what we're going to talk about later with the Auburn housing needs assessment. So.
The last point I think I would make on this is that if the council decides to go in a direction of setting some type of cap on vacancy, that discussion should not take place in the context of a mobile home park ordinance, because now you're into setting rent, you're firmly in rent control, and instead of talking about hundreds of people, we're going to be talking about many thousands of people who have the exact same concerns about rentals. I think I'm not saying it's not appropriate to have that discussion about mobile home parks, but I think it's a broader discussion, and I think if the council wants to talk about rent control more broadly, then we should have that broad discussion, and the council shouldn't enter the rent control world through a narrow section of a mobile home park ordinance. Anything else on I? No,
The only thing I would add too, just keep in mind as a lens for perspective when looking at ordinances, it's beyond just what we have today, right? So if we're just looking at this as the three current existing, but what if we had a very brand new development come in? There's nothing in this language that sets those rates for that brand-new mobile home park, nor do I think we want to be in that business. And so this language would say that brand-new development, they set those new rates, and then this applies to those tenants just like it does, or the owners of those mobile homes, just like the existing ones. So just keep that lens in mind. It's just, I constantly think about the operational workload when we talk about some of these, and some of these layers could add a lot of oversight and regulation that we don't have the staffing for. And so that concerns me as well.
So, Jay,
Actually,
section.
Mayor, sorry. Just a quick, it's a general question related to that, and those are all great points. Thank you. One question I have is, when we start to think about broadening it, there was that development which had a similar structure to this that went in front of the planning board. Did that get approved? And if so, would this actually apply to that or not?
No, so that's a really great question. So to remind everyone, I think Councilor Duvall is talking about Danville Corner Road. The city was very clear with the developer that this effort was underway, and those would be stick-built houses on a foundation where they would have lot rent. And we were clear that if they took that approach, then this effort related to the mobile home parks would have to be broadened out. After that discussion, they understood that that probably wasn't the best approach to take, and they've taken a different approach to that development, because it would be, it would be exactly the same issue of facing with the mobile home parks with the an added complexity of trying to move a stick-built house on a foundation.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so the next item is J, fees allowed. We've talked a little bit about this. This is where we talk about water, sewer, solid waste grounds maintenance can be in the base rent. Additional fees would have to be have advance approval from the Rent Stabilization Board, and the park owner has to demonstrate that the additional fees are directly related to and proportionate to costs incurred for providing the additional service. Any questions on this section? Council Platt.
Would this effectively ban the pet fee that I've heard folks talking about? I know that's anecdotal, but I'm curious about that.
Yeah, but it's a very good example. So I think there's someone in the audience here that has testified before that they have house cats. Now, house cats have never left their mobile home, so one would say that under this you can't have a fee for that because there is no cost impact on the park owner. They don't leave the person's mobile home. You might be able to have a pet fee if, say, let's say a mobile home park allows dogs and they have an area where dogs can do their business, and the mobile home park owner is undertaking the cost to clean that every day or whatever. They might be able to make the case to the board by proving what their cost was, and of course, as an additional fee,
perhaps, yeah.
But it would only be applicable to people that use that service, right? You couldn't apply that to everybody in the mobile home. Well, I guess you could if they all had a dog.
No, I like that. I want to look out for the residents because I've heard that come up a number of times, but I also want to make sure that a property owner has the ability to charge for their costs. It sounds like this covers that.
Mm-hmm. Other questions on J? So K is related to notice of violation. So these would be notice of violations issued by code enforcement for any of the variety of land use or building code regulations that they apply to any property throughout the city. This would preclude a owner of a mobile home park from implementing any type of base rent increase or additional fee increase if they had unresolved NOVs. To be clear, it's unresolved NOVs after the appeals process. You know, legal is pretty clear that there's no basis for the city to deny fees until the person's due process rights to appeal have been exhausted. But if they have outstanding NOVs after the appeal process, they're not remediated, they could not apply any type of a base rent or additional fee increase. Any questions on that section? Next, section 5 is applicability. This applies to all the mobile home parks in the city except for one exception. If the park is owned by a cooperative or other entity whose membership is limited to the mobile home park residents, in other words, the park residents own the mobile home park and they collectively manage it, think of it as like condo association rules, right? The mobile home park association, the residents would be able to decide their own rules amongst themselves. Any questions on applicability? Section 6 is next. That's appeals. The appeals can be taken by either park owners or affected mobile home residents. This would be an 80K type action in Superior Court. There's no limitation here. I think councils will remember the model ordinance, and what some other cities have done is require like a 51% of the park residents to sign a petition before anybody could appeal, and that's not included here. That there's lots of issues, I think, with if you have a contentious relationship between a park owner and the residents, getting 51% of the people to sign, and secondly, you're really limiting the rights of half the people in the mobile home park to file appeal if they're individually affected. So, question on appeals? All right, after we've reviewed the ordinance here, any further general questions, thoughts? Items that you want further work done before the next work session, other than the definitional items in the handout that we talked about earlier?
The next stage of this will be a first reading. Is that right?
No.
No,
So
it'll
we're
just
go-
be
we're
another
gonna
one, a
have-
second workshop.
Yes,
I'm
we're
just
gonna-
curious when the next opportunity, for those who are following along this process, I look forward to hearing public
Yeah.
feedback
Yeah,
whenever
so-
that timeline approaches.
So the general public will be able to comment. We'll presume that at the next meeting, which would be the 6th? Yeah, thanks, July 6th. We'll have another workshop. You know, there won't be public comment at that. So July, assuming we get all the workshop items wrapped up on the 6th, the first reading would be on the 20th of July. There'd be public comment at that. And then second reading would also have a public hearing. That would be the first meeting in August. And the public, again, they can comment again, or if they hadn't commented, it's another opportunity for them. Other thoughts or questions at this point?
Just another thanks to all involved in putting this together. I think it's a really solid step forward in addressing the needs and the issues at hand.
I'll agree with Councilor Cowan.
Yeah, I agree as well. I want to extend thanks to the mobile home park residents, you know, who made their voices heard, that there was an issue in the community that needed to be addressed, and to Councilor Randall, Duval, and Butler, who have mobile home parks in their wards, for championing the effort to develop an ordinance and put it before the council. Okay. Anything further on this? So From a timing perspective, the manager believes that the executive session, that's item number 9 on the agenda, that we can accomplish that before we enter into regular session at 7 p.m. So we'll conclude the workshop. Is there a motion to go into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA Section 405, Sub 6C, for discussion of an economic development matter where premature disclosures of the information would prejudice the competitive or bargaining position of the city?
Motion to move.
Moved by Counsel Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counsel Cowan. Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? The council will be in executive session. The June 15th, 2026 Auburn City Council meeting will be called to order. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. If we could have the councilors introduce themselves, starting with Councilor Gary.
Good evening. I'm Belinda Gary, City Councilor at Large.
Good evening, Tim Cowan, City Councilor for Ward 2.
Good evening, Matthew Duval, City Councilor, Ward 3.
Good evening, Jeff Harmon, Mayor.
Good evening, Kelly Butler for Ward 4 City Council.
Good evening, Leroy Walker, Ward 5 Councilor.
Good evening, Adam Platt, City Councilor at Large.
Good evening, Brendan Edwards, Student Representative.
Phil Kroll, City Manager.
Thank you. The first item tonight is a consent agenda. There's two items on the consent agenda. Consent agenda. Confirming Chief Mullen's appointment of Jared Brewer as a constable with firearms and appointing Brian Batchelder as the local sealer of weights and measures. Is there a motion to adopt the consent
Motion
agenda?
to approve.
Moved by
Second.
Councilor Walker, seconded by Councilor Gary. The vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? 6 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion's adopted. The next item is approval of the minutes of the June 1st, 2026 regular City Council meeting. Are there any errors or corrections? Not seeing any, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Councilor
Second.
Walker, seconded by Councilor Cowan. The vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? 6 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. We'll move on to communications, presentations, and recognitions. The first item is recognizing Mubarak Abdullahi. He's our senior student representative. If you'll come up to the front. Good. Well, look, we want to recognize Mubarak. You know, there hadn't been student representatives on the student council for quite a while, and the council reinstituted this, and Mubarak jumped right in and has joined us for the last couple of years. He's a graduating senior this year, so we'll be moving on. But we wanted to recognize him and provide him this certificate of appreciation for all his work attending city council meetings in the last couple of years. Thank you very much. So our next item is a update on the Project Support You program. If you'd like to come forward. And if the presenters could introduce themselves, that'd be very helpful.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I'm Jennifer Edwards. I'm the Public Health Manager.
Hello, I'm Steve Almquist, Deputy Chief at EMS and Training for the Fire Department.
Erica West, Project Support You Liaison.
And just as a reminder, the 2 microphones on that side, you have to push the button when you speak, because they're not open mics. Is it open? Okay, then please speak a little
Just bring the
closer
mics
so it'll pick you up. Thanks. Sorry, go on.
So thank you.
I'm sorry, we got one more on the end.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. So I know that we have a short period of time. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to update all of you. And for some of you, it will be the first time that you get to do a little bit more of a deep dive into our Project Support You program. So the program began in 2023 with ARPA dollars, and we had come to council later in 2023 to give an update, and so it's been a little bit since we've been back. And I just wanted to first set the context before the team kind of dives into some of the more data in terms of our liaisons and the work that they do in terms of responding to and with our co-responders, are responding with fire and PD, and also following up on calls when they're not on duty. So they are following up with mental health and substance use, but also doing this in a context where we have active homelessness in our city. So I wanted for folks to be able to just kind of see an update on some of the numbers of where we're at just in terms of PSY's contact. So in 2025, they had made 235 contacts with unhoused or unstably housed individuals in 2025, and about 30% of that number were repeat contacts. So individuals that they were seeing in the community more than once. And in 2024, we did have a little bit of a gap where we didn't have PSY workers for a time. So I can't give you 2024 data to compare it to. But in 2023, for the short, when we had come back to the council in August, we had about 5 or 6 months of data. And in that short window, there were 246 contacts, and about 30% were repeat contacts. So it's definitely a area where our liaisons are also triaging not just substance use and mental health, but also triaging to housing professionals. And just for some added context as well, I wanted folks to also just understand that it's an age spectrum that people are working across, and that within our unhoused community, we also have children in our school systems who qualify for McKinney-Vento services. So those are our students, and when it says unaccompanied, just for those of you who haven't seen that number before, unaccompanied are the students that are not only meeting the eligibility requirements for McKinney-Vento services, which is either homelessness, it also includes couch surfing. So it includes those kiddos that don't have a stable place and they might be living in a hotel with their family. Unaccompanied youth are even more at risk because they are not within the custody of a parent or guardian as well. So they are even more vulnerable. So I wanted you to just kind of have that update from our McKinney-Vento liaison as well in terms of the trends for her numbers, just so you can kind of have that broader context of where that fits into the work of our liaisons and our first responders. And I believe actually one quick update on here, this was as of 3/11. So the numbers as of today, we actually were up to 169 students identified, with 42 identified as unaccompanied, and we have 15 days for students to be identified in this academic year. And Ernestine.
So with some of the information that we had for calls for service for 2025, we kind of broke it up into sort of the type of call, and we'll go into that in the next slide. But the number of unique individuals was 339. That's individual contacts with folks, not repeats. So that's a lot of contact in 1 year for out in the community. And the total calls for service were 610. Police department totals were 303 calls for service that a Project Support You worker was accompanying them. And with the fire department, it was 307. This slide shows overall sort of a generalized, why do we get in contact with the community? And it rates, of course, according to, the most largest number that you'll see is just a follow-up, which generally means that we've either received a referral from police or fire, or perhaps even someone in the community, and we're following up on that individual. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they've had a large incident that's impacted them in a mental health capacity, but obviously someone is concerned about them, so a PSY worker is going there and following up, and then it goes accordingly. You can see the numbers. I know you have these in their packet, so I won't go into all of the details. The types of referrals and interventions that PSY can oftentimes engage with an individual. Obviously, in the previous slide, it shows sort of why we would engage. And then this is kind of broken down into the type of contact that we're having in terms of, is it with the individual, is it with a family member, other concerned person, medical transport. And you can see that the vast number are directly with the individual themselves that's being, in need of some sort in the community. And then this just breaks it down into a little bit more specifics about sort of what we're finding for presenting problems when the PSY are going out into the community and serving individuals. And you can see that the largest number here, which continues, we see this trend also in 2026, continues to increase, is basic needs. So, needing support and resources and connections for housing, food, clothing, hygiene, all sorts of things. And then you'll see that descending from there, the various different ways. This is a pretty comprehensive list, but this is a very realistic list of what Project Support You is doing for the community and the types of services and engagements that we're having, how we're supporting. And then just another slide specifically talking about how we're finding individuals in terms of their housing status. Oftentimes, you can see that, our largest number actually was housed individuals. It's kind of oftentimes a misnomer about the Project Support You is only serving the unhoused, but you'll see in this particular data collection that it's actually people with a home that we're supporting, and that number is increasing as well. And obviously followed very second by unsheltered and homelessness in the encampments and shelters, staying in a car, etc.
Thank you, Ernestine. Chief Moen?
So you can see here this data reflects the breakdown for the types of calls that we handled, with well-being checks and the PFC person cared for calls and psychiatric problems are leading the calls for us, and they continue to trend upward in 2026 as well. And this is a breakdown of our overdose report from 2020 to 2025. You can see that the ODs have gone down in the last 4 years, and we are happy with those results so far. You'll see that in June through August of 25, we had a particularly high spike in our Narcan administrations, and that was due to a unusually potent batch of fentanyl that hit the streets that was mixed with ketamine. So that's the first time we'd seen that type of mixture, and we saw a large number of overdoses based on that. So that's the spike there.
All right, so the creation of PSY, the target areas for it were focusing on mental health, SUD, and homelessness. But an additional data point that was part of that was reducing the number of frequent system users or people that access 911 often. So what I'd like to do is just kind of walk you through what a frequent system user is, how that impacts the fire department, and how the PSY program is able to kind of improve this. So if you can see here for 2025, total calls for the fire department was just about 6,000, a little over 6,000 calls. So that's everything from fire alarms, car accidents, rope rescue, EMS calls, all the things. Among that, about 5,000 of those were EMS related in some capacity. And of those 5,000 EMS calls, we contacted about 3,000 individual patients. And if we look at those individual patients, what we see is that if someone were to call 911, typically it'd be one time. It's pretty consistent over the last several years as well. So again, just kind of breaking that down a little bit further. So as you can see, you know, about half or well over half of people that contact 911 for a medical reason, are just 1 to 2 calls. So I see this as their problem is being solved. But as we kind of go up the call volume per individual, we can see here that once you reach beyond 4 calls for service, that's almost 25% of our call volume. And that's being made up of about roughly 200 people. Next slide. So the question is, why is that? Now, in a typical EMS response, a person calls 911 for help. EMS responds, assesses the patient, treats the patient, and transports them to the ER. The ER is the only allowable destination that we can transport to in a 911 situation. At the ER, this patient is then stabilized and either discharged or they're transferred or over to some other specialist for final care. But what they're missing is something to actually solve some of these problems. So for these nuanced needs like mental health, substance use disorder, or homelessness, these patients are particularly well underserved. The goal of the PSY program is to kind of break this cycle. We're using these subject matter experts, as I like to refer to them as, to connect these individuals with an appropriate resource and minimize the reliance on the 911 ER system. Just some cases to kind of highlight some successes here. Now, what this chart does show is contacts with PSY during 2025. We did have some periods of vacancy that year, so we had coverage in the spring and then briefly again in the early fall. So this covers both of that. But what we'll see here is that, you know, some of these will highlight some of the impacts that these PSY workers are having on. Case 1 here, this is an individual that's actually had interactions with PSY throughout the entire program and has shown great success when they are interacting with this PSY worker. But as you can see here, the total calls this individual had was 70 for 2025. Again, the average person calls once, maybe twice. So prior to having PSY contact, this individual called 911 20 times for EMS. Again, there could be additional calls PD related as well. During their interaction, while they had a connection with PSY, that call volume dropped to 4, and after there was a vacancy, that call volume rose again to 46. Another example here, case 3, again, something similar as well. Total calls for the year was 28. They had 5 calls prior to contact with PSY, but then once there was a vacancy, those calls rose to 20. Another one here, case 5. This person had contact with both the PSY workers. And so as you can see here, there was 8 calls for service for the year. But then after they were able to make contact with a PSY worker both times, their call volume reduced. Lastly, to case 7. This individual had 10 calls for service. They had an increase of calls, 5 during PSY, but that was only during the first month. They ended up having several months of interactions with the PSY liaison and no calls during that time. After there was a vacancy, we only had 1 call for service for the year. So definitely some great improvements. Next slide, please. So how will PSY impact us in the future? What we have here is a chart that came from the 2025 Maine EMS data report, which was released, I believe, back in April. What this was showing is using the data throughout the state, what calls for services are they seeing that are top numbers, and what is the projection that we're going to see in the future. And what I highlighted here is that a couple of these that definitely are PSY focused is they're predicting an increase in behavioral and overdoses in the future. Next slide. So Narcan administration. Opioid use tends to be a primary focus. And the question that usually arises is, what is your Narcan administration? However, this can be slightly misleading. As you can see here in 21-22, we started having a decline in Narcan administration, so this would be EMS providers administering Narcan. But we don't see, or what this data can't tell us, is how much of Narcan is being administered prior to our EMS providers arriving on scene. So and a lot of this can be attributed to more access to Narcan for civilians, either through different programs or maybe a prescription pharmacy access. PD administration of Narcan as well. Often they're first arriving on scene and able to administer this prior to EMS arrival. Programs like Options, where they're able to coordinate with these people, work with these people, and also hand out Narcan as well. All of these factors will increase or reduce, I guess, our administration of Narcan. Additionally, too, around 2023, the Maine EMS protocol change that happened, or the update that happened around then, introduced the naloxone leave behind program. What that is someone who has suffered an opiate overdose but refuses transport. The EMS providers also distribute a Narcan kit with some education and referral to the Options program as well. So that is also just another avenue where Narcan is getting into our community. Next slide, please. As I said, opioids are not necessarily, although they are a primary focus, they're not necessarily a single issue that we face, and not necessarily a single issue that PSY liaisons are able to work with as well. So what this slide shows is documented EMS primary impressions. So when the EMS provider creates a patient care report, they kind of select from a column of what they basically think their diagnosis is, for lack of a better term. But what these numbers are, this is just a snippet, but the total numbers, these are anything that has to do with any sort of substance use, alcohol use. So this could be alcohol, this could be opiates, this could be other illicit drugs, this could be misuse of prescription medications. They all kind of fall into this toxicology type category. But as we can see here, the numbers for opioids are fairly consistent. We're starting to get some drops here in 24 and 25, especially 24, good year. But on average, if we had this, on average, our monthly contacts for these types of calls has been fairly consistent. It's about 20 contacts a month for some sort of toxicological case. But as you see here, alcohol and opioids are kind of the two leading substances that we can pinpoint in this data. The state has implemented some incentives to help assist these people, i.e. Options, but these programs are limited in staff and are typically county-based. Being one of the more populated communities in this area, these state programs don't necessarily have the capacity to be able to meet our community's needs. And this is where the PSY liaisons can come in. Our PSY liaisons are trained in alcohol and opioid use disorders and are able to supplement some of these programs like Options. Additionally, it is well known that many of these individuals that are suffering from SUD may also have additional barriers as well, such as transportation, homelessness, food insecurity, or mental health. These PSY liaisons are also able to refer these individuals to additional programs to help remove those barriers and hopefully increase success. PSY liaisons have the knowledge and tools to link these individuals with appropriate resources, and this will help by improving these individuals' lives and success by making these resource connections, and additionally breaking that EMS ER cycle and to hopefully improve our contacts from that one.
Thank you, Steve. So one other point that I, just for those of you who don't know where we are right now with PSY workers, we currently have 3. So we have 2 with the police department and we have 1 with the fire department. When we first started in 2023, we had 1 PSY worker that was shared between both departments, which was challenging, as you might imagine, based on the number of calls. And in terms of the options liaisons, we have 3, in actually 2 now, Ernestine, in Androscoggin County? Yes. 2 in Androscoggin County that cover all of Androscoggin County. And they are specifically, they're tasked specifically with responding to calls where substance use are an issue. So for those instances where someone is maybe homeless and experience a mental health crisis and there's no substance use, then that's not within the scope of options. There is also a program called PATH that is run by KBH, Kennebec Behavioral Health. They have 1 PATH worker to work with unhoused individuals, again, for all of Androscoggin County. So our PSY liaisons are that, support that our first responder teams need for the population in Auburn that they're serving with these kind of tricky calls with people that need some extra care. So we're going to share some success snapshots. And so our PSY worker, Erica, is here as well with Peggy. So I'll hand it off to Erica.
Hi, I'm Erica West, and I've been doing this for about 1.5 years now, and I'm very thankful for this position. I've learned a lot, and it's great to be out in the community with the officers and doing ride-alongs, and it's challenging for sure, but it's been a lot of great moments too. I'm really nervous talking up here right now. Sorry. But yeah, I've been a substance abuse counselor for it was about 12 years, and then I started this role for 1.5 years. And I get to go into schools, the jail. It's great. It's a great opportunity to make connections with everyone there and do follow-ups. So very thankful for that. But I'm also very thankful for Peggy being here today. They asked her to come and speak. I've known you since I've started.
You met me at the ice machine at the Big Apple.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm very proud of her. She was very determined from the moment I met her. She was ready to make a change, and
I didn't let them go what I went through up there.
Yeah, she was ready to get an apartment, so, I brought her to property management place to drop off her application. We worked together, like going to the drop-in center, met every week, made sure, she had some resources and all that, and yeah, you've been at your new place for how long now?
July 1st will be 1 year.
Yeah. So I'm very proud of you, and thank you for being here.
I just didn't think that being homeless and then ending up here, having a lot of my friends end up police officers, Erica, and, it's a big change. What I went through out there, I tried to stay away from, like when it was raining in the tunnels, they would do their needles and then throw them at me. And it was horrible out there. I don't want to do it again. 16 months but I had the Big Apple let me sleep by their ice machine. I had police officers watching me all the time, keeping an eye. I got attacked by a drunken woman with a bat. I had staples in my head, and I've had everybody, I can't say how many people have had my back, helped me out to get me this far. They were like Tyler Barney's, he's right there on the top of the list. He's been there from day one. And I've made a lot of friends. I just want to thank anybody that's helped me get to where I'm at today. Thanks.
So you can see where this program has been a huge success for the city. And one of the goals was to reduce the call volume on our first responder system, and it's working. So as we move forward for the future of PSY, we've applied for a couple of grants to try to bring that in-house, and we're going to continue to chase that funding to stabilize the program and and expand it with more workers, because we found that with this initial deployment, it's very successful. So if we can model it and add to that program, it's just going to bring more success to the community.
Thanks very much. I appreciate the presentation. Any questions from the council? Council Platt.
Thank you all for the presentation. It's great. It's great to see progress be made and growth with this program. My question, I'm not sure who it's for. I guess at its most basic sense, it's about staffing levels and what we're able to accomplish. I understand we have 3 members of the team now. My question is twofold. One, with unlimited budget, which is not a reality, but in a hypothetical world with an unlimited budget, it sounds like right now we're effectuating about 0.5% of our overall calls. Fire had about 6,000, and there were 300 PSY calls out of the 6,000. I'm just assuming similar numbers for police. I might be wrong, but how many calls do you think we could be tending to if we had a liege of 100 PSY workers? I mean, what percentage of our calls fit into what you've just described to us that we're not able to get to because we don't have the staff, we don't have the funding?
I think with an unlimited budget, so to speak, with a healthy, stable core of PSY workers, anywhere from 10 to 15 workers, we could reduce our call volume by 20% on the PD side easily.
And so with that as the backdrop, I guess my question is, in the short term, you just mentioned some grants and you talked about it from a monetary sense, but what's your vision of again, assuming funding is not an issue, we can find grant monies or budget monies for this. What's the goal? Where would we like to see this in a year or 2 or 3? Obviously 10 is a large number, but we have 3 now. Could it be 4? Could it be 5? Could it be 6?
Yeah, I think in the next short-term cycle of this, if we could expand the program to 6 to 7 workers and also model it after Bangor's community action team that they have, where they're going out, not only are they doing PSY, but they're doing options work as well, path work as well. And it's offering a more wraparound model where PSY is working on one thing, options is working on another thing. If we can create that program to provide a complete wraparound service to our clientele, that is going to reduce the call volume on the public safety side of it.
I would also like to add too, I mean, I think there's kind of a 2-pronged approach with this type of program. You have the kind of acute response type. So, maybe someone calls 911 for a mental health crisis, but it's nonviolent or there's not a lot of danger, and there's a response there by like a PSY liaison type model. But additionally, we don't want to forget about kind of the follow-up model that we have working here as well. Especially on the EMS side, a lot of the areas and individuals that PSY can help, it's not crystal clear when that dispatch comes in. It could be that you're going to a chest pain call, but when you get there, that's not really what it is. Maybe there's a substance use or a homelessness or other type of issue that's really the core problem. So having that ability to contact somebody and say, hey, we found someone that we think could benefit from this program, or at least benefit from something more than bringing them to the ER. Can you help? You have the connections. So having that kind of 2-pronged approach too would be super beneficial.
But also, it's essential to remember that if we expand the program to try to reduce those calls for service, that doesn't replace or reduce our need for sworn staff. That would allow our sworn staff to become more proactive versus reactive that we are now. So,
and not be thinly staffed.
Correct. They would be able to shift our focus to be more proactive. So I just don't want that message out there that if we expand that, we're going to reduce sworn staffing, because that's unrealistic.
Council Walker.
Yeah, could you explain why it seems like there's been years where we have the PSY people, but then all at once we don't? What is causing that, do you think?
Jennifer had referenced a little bit in 2023 that when we first started the program, we had one PSY, and they were, the first half of the day they might work with the PD, and the latter half of the day they might work with fire. I think it was really challenging to find a candidate that had a law enforcement background or interest or training, as well as fire and EMS, first response, as well as behavioral health. Those are unique individuals, and they aren't necessarily coming to work in community if they are out there. So it was a struggle, I think, to find someone who had, a multi-layered sort of background of experience. And so over the course of time, I think we've sort of established what works. And generally, when we were able to get additional funding in the past, we were able to split that position. And obviously, that's how the program grew. But also to have a specialty, someone with a little bit more of a background and an interest and a familiarity with fire and EMS made more sense for them to have their own PSY, and then also with the PD. And so we're finding more success at having separate jurisdictions, so to speak, and departments to be assigned to. And that's been our success in the past probably year and a half.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Council Collin, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. More of a comment for my fellow councilors. First, thank you all for the presentation and the phenomenal work you do. Project Support You program is just, it really is. My comment is that I want to focus on those follow-up calls and the value that goes beyond the important value of reducing the burden of calls on our public safety, police and fire, but it's the ability that relationship with the Project Support You liaisons create with individuals who then, particularly for homelessness, and so I'll bring that back to the Homelessness Committee. The Homelessness Committee did actually formally vote, it was unanimous support, to just communicate to you all as city councilors the return on investment that goes beyond the call volume and reducing the important burden on the public safety, but for homelessness in particular, being able to help people make those connections on the long-term basis and be more successful there. So, thanks.
Council Butler.
Great job. This is very hard work that you're doing. I do it every day, so I'm very familiar with the work you're doing. The integration that you're doing, too, can be really challenging, so I just wanted to acknowledge what a great job you're doing with that. I do have a question around, as we're looking at going into summer, what are the supports that our youth are going to see that you've identified in the work that you're doing?
I do bring some kids that I'm working with to the PAL Center. I do that often. I go there weekly. Other than that, I do just try to myself meet up with some of the kids that I've been already meeting with at school. Just work on coping skills and check in with them on a regular basis. But I would say, there's I try to do referrals the best that I can with services and counseling or case management, camps, anything I can try to get them into.
Yeah, one of the challenges that we face is with the current setup of the program, we don't have a lot of bandwidth to take on extra projects or extra specialties. Like the summer kids, we'll try to help them as much as we can, but given our limited resources and our limited bandwidth, there's not a whole lot of room for growth there. With the addition of more staffing, we could expand those programs and be more successful. But right now, we just don't have the bandwidth to do a lot of extra things right now.
Thank you.
Other questions from the council? Councilor Duvall.
I just want to say thank you. This is really a great bit of information that you all are sharing with us, and the work that you do is really great, so thanks.
Representative Edwards.
Is there any organizations that you guys are working with for the youth, or no, other than PSY?
As far as what kind of services to offer, pretty much with us it's PAL. to target that group of kids during the summertime, and with the summer rec programs and whatnot. But for us, for the police department, it's the PAL Center.
The way the PSY kind of works too with the liaison, they end up having all the connections, if you will, so they may not specifically be working with that individual from now until forever, but they're able to find somebody that can, and they know, a bunch of different programs that they may be able to try or hear new ones coming in. So that's kind of their role too, is setting someone up with something that may be out there that we're not aware of.
I'll also add that Spurwink does have some, they have their own in-house programming and counseling for youth and families as well. And as Steve mentioned, Spurwink has a lot of other connections in the community, Generational NOR, and just a variety of other organizations that they're able to refer to.
Thanks. Any other questions from the council? Council Walker.
Thank you very much. On the, I'm looking at the referral made. You individuals, you had, we'll say 245 yeses, and then no 211, for a total of 466. But you've only spoken, and the question is, why is there so less families being spoken with or contacted? It says a total of 37. Is it because most of these people are adults, or it's too hard to be able to get to the families?
So Ernestine, it's, let me see if I can bring up this, oh, the slide deck is closed.
No, that's okay.
Most are adults.
Most are adults, yeah. That the majority of engagement is with adults that the PSY are working with. And sometimes because perhaps, the situation that they're in or the path that they've been on, it breaks families up oftentimes, and they may not have those natural supports there any longer. There might be fractured relationships. So oftentimes it is the individual that you're starting with. It's not uncommon also for the PSY to try to get the individual to engage with family members, and to have PSY also engage with the family members. So we kind of take the lead, from the individual that they're serving, and if that's possible, they certainly try to engage them.
Any other questions from the council? Not seeing any. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming in and spending the time to give us the update, and thanks very much for all the great work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item under communications is a communication from the city clerk regarding a certified school budget validation referendum results. From the clerk certification, were 4,553 people that voted. 3,196, or 70%, voted in favor of the school budget. 1,279, or 28%, were opposed, and 78 voters, or 2%, left their ballot blank, and the school budget, of course, was approved. We'll move on to the first open session of the evening. If there's any member of the public who would like to address the council about items not on tonight's agenda, please approach the podium and provide your name and address.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Abigail Fauché, and I live at 28 Winter Street in Auburn, Maine. And I'm speaking here tonight regarding an ongoing issue that the residents of Winter Street have endured since the opening of the new PAL Center. On behalf of the Winter Street residents, we're asking that the City Council install no parking and tow signs along Winter Street and Chestnut Street, advising individuals not to block driveways. As we know, it's illegal to block driveways behind a cross or in any way, shape, or form that obstructs one's ability to enter or leave their driveway. With me today, I have photos of the parking situation that date back to September of 2025 with the grand reopening of the new PAL Center, highlighting the illegal parking of parkgoers to the gully in the PAL Center. If I may approach the council, I'd like to distribute these pictures for viewing.
Yeah, if you can provide them to the clerk, and she'll copy them, send them around to the city councilors. Thank you.
I'm voicing my concerns today due to the inability to get these issues resolved by other community outlets. Since 2025, residents have attempted to call non-emergent police lines in an attempt to resolve the parking issues that are ongoing. Once called in and when the police arrive, parkgoers have been noted to run from officers on the scene, and police are unable to track down the individuals blocking and obstructing driveways. In more recent calls, I personally have been told to take this matter up with the city, hence why I'm speaking with you all tonight. Other residents of Winter Street who've called in to voice these concerns are unable to enter or exit their driveways in the past month, have been told by police to consider moving. This male individual wishes to remain anonymous, but unfortunately this response kind of seems subpar given that the resident has lived on Winter Street for over 3 decades. And on the matter of noise, I also want to ask the City Council to request a nightly patrol for the PAL Center as well as the Gully Park. Display signs state that the park closes at sundown. However, parkgoers frequently are at the park between 9 p.m. to midnight. And not only does this continue to obstruct driveways, but also the residents of Winter Street have voiced numerous concerns regarding the noise, given that the park is supposed to be closed after sundown. As of today, park signs were installed in front of the PAL Center, advising that parkgoers are no longer able to park at the PAL unless they're deemed authorized personnel. And I fear, unfortunately, that Winter Street residents are going to face even more problems regarding leaving and entering their driveway due to a lack of parking spots available. However, with the pictures that I just handed over, there's one with the yellow sticky note that shows that this honestly might not even be a problem because parkgoers aren't even actually using the parking spots prior to this sign being put up today. Thus, I'm asking on behalf of the Winter Street residents for no parking and towing signs to be installed across Winter and Chestnut Street, advising parkgoers not to park in front of driveways. We also would like for violators to be towed in an effective response to ongoing issues that residents have faced this past year, as well as, if possible, nightly patrols. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in. The city manager and assistant city manager, I noticed, were taking some notes, so they'll look into this issue with the police department and Parks and Rec at PAL about the situation. Thank you. Go ahead,
Good
ma'am.
evening. I'm Candace Northrup, 36 Winter Street. I live next door. We've had several times when we were not able to get in and out of our driveway where cars just, a few feet, they're blocking us. Another concern is late night. They're drag racing. It sounds like it. I think the speed limit's 25 on Winter Street. I don't know if it's posted. Maybe it should be posted. But there's people going much too quickly on Winter Street very late at night. So the parking, the late nights, also large groups of young people, and I love young people. I want them to have a place to go, but it can't be late night right there. It's too loud. It's disturbing. So we hope that something can be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other member of the public who'd like to address the council? Please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, the open session is closed. We'll move on to unfinished business. The first item is ordinance 110601 2026, replacing the Complete Streets Committee with Parking and Traffic Safety Committee. This will be for second reading and a public hearing. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Cowan, seconded by Councilor Walker. We'll open the public hearing. If there's any member of the public who'd like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address.
Hello, Hello again, I'm Catherine Truitt, a member of the Complete Streets Committee appointed from 105 Winter Street in Auburn. I just wanted to bring up my concerns again on the second reading. I wanted to be more specific about some things that came up during the workshop that was presented first to the council. The representatives that spoke about what Complete Streets did, I had never seen him at a Complete Streets meeting. If he was speaking on behalf of someone in Auburn who regularly attends our meetings, I wasn't aware of that, but he gave the wrong days and times for our meetings. He was not familiar with many of the projects that we had done for Auburn, and I'm just going to start listing some. We addressed issues on Loring Avenue, Granite Street, Hillsdale Street, Davis Avenue, Merrill Road, Blanchard Road, Hershey Hill Road, Mount Auburn Avenue, Turner and Denison. There was a project to specifically address the traffic issues at Turner and Denison Street intersection, and we were involved in the redesign of that, of Denison Street. I think, well, it's the whole intersection of both those streets. We gave feedback to Auburn Transportation Studies on the design of those studies and survey questions, and also we heard feedback from from several studies. We also helped with redesign on Spring Street, Washington North and South. Specifically, we heard about the fatal crashes on the beach, I think it was Washington Street and Beach Hill. Yes, Beach Hill intersection. So we heard from community members and Auburn City about the concerns with that, and we provided feedback on the short-term adjustments to that road where they put in, they lowered it to 45, but we also said just putting specifically, my feedback was putting a new speed limit does not actually slow people down. Is there any way to narrow the road? And that is part of the project that is either just starting or going through planning phases to completely redesign Washington North and South, so that there is one through traffic area and one more neighborhood-oriented design to the street so that it's safer and that there is less chance of collisions between residential roads like Beach Hill Road and Washington Street North with lots of traffic to 95. And we also helped with Minot Ave. That has a transportation study that's either just started or is in progress, and we provided feedback on some of their study questions. And also Court Street. We used to have a previous committee member who had family near Court Street, and one of his reoccurring points on committee is how can we make Court Street better for his family and people, school-aged children that were attending the school on Court Street. Let's see. So to correct what was said at the committee meeting, we officially meet the fourth Wednesday of every January, April, June, and October, plus whenever needed. So we've had community-specific meetings. We've been asked to attend or help with setting up demonstration projects in both cities, Lewiston and Auburn. So I believe the person said we meet every fourth Wednesday, but that's not true, but we do meet pretty often. And when I looked back at the Auburn website, our minutes and agenda items are not posted before June of last year, when I have records before then, and I'm an Auburn representative of the council, so I'm wondering where those are going. I had to find a lot of these records on the Lewiston City website. One of the concerns that council brought up, or one of the answers to my concerns that council brought up, was the use of the Androscoggin Valley Council of Governments and the Androscoggin Transportation Resource Center. There is some idea that they can replace what we do, but we have often provided input to these committees to like design projects, and not every project involves federal funding. Or we get federal funding and then the project is still in progress. Like they still want feedback on things that are going on, transportation studies, things like that. And so we've had several, like almost every meeting involves comments to the ATRC or AVCG. Like we talk to them often and they solicit our input. I'm wondering what will happen when they can no longer solicit our input. There seems to be a gap in information if they are constantly seeking us out. Why is that? And replacing the committee without figuring out why they continue to come to us is short-sighted, in my opinion. When I looked up the Antietam Transportation Resource Center, most of their projects seemed focused on years-long city plans and stuff like that. And one of their committees meets every 2 years. So short-term, like they cannot address short-term concerns in the community, I believe. That's all I would like to talk about today. I did want the committee to consider what multiple groups this new committee is supposedly coalescing, because it just seems like it's replacing Complete Streets, which already does a lot of stuff. And then why can Complete Streets not address some of these concerns that are brought up by this new committee? Why was there was no suggestion to amend our ordinance to help address these issues more, more specifically? I feel like that would have been a better option than just completely replacing our committee. And I still have some concerns about the focus on
If you could wrap your
Yes.
comments up, please.
Yes. That I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Is there any other member of the public who'd like to address the council on this issue? Please approach the podium. Not seeing any, the public hearing's closed. Discussion by the council. Council ready for the question? The vote will be by roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilor Duvall?
Yes.
Councilor Butler?
Yes.
Councilor Walker?
Yes.
Councilor Platts?
Yes.
Councilor Gary?
Yes.
And Councilor Cowan?
Yes. 6 having voted affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is under new business, ordinance 1206152026, amending Chapter 14, Business Licenses and Permits of the city's Code of Ordinances to adopt regulations regarding syringe service programs. This will be for first reading. Is there a motion?
Motion to move.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Walker. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Councilor Platts. Is any member of the public who'd like to address the council on this item? Please approach the podium and provide your name and address.
Quentin Chapman, 51 Eastman Lane. Came ill prepared, was stacking wood, got a notification this was happening tonight. I worked for a long time. I worked with you, Chief, for a while. In the City of Auburn, I was doing theft and loss with a company. The owner, before he passed away, we had a deal. If somebody was stealing, no matter what it was, we would prosecute, except for that one chance that they were stealing food, substance to keep them alive. And in my 10 years, 12 years doing that, I only came across one person. And I caught up with them later, and I made sure they got a Subway sandwich, and anytime they needed something, they could ask. They were so shamed, they didn't take advantage of that, but the opportunity was there. And now we're talking about giving away needles. No nutritional value, doesn't save lives. And you don't have to look far. You look north, You can look across the river and see how effective it is. It hasn't worked well. I don't have statistics in front of me. Hepatitis and AIDS is a huge issue in Portland, southern Maine, northern Maine, and it's due to needles. A nice lady was sitting right over here talking about how she had to deal with needles during her homeless stint. I don't have an issue with a person being homeless. I don't have an issue with a person having a drug habit. I don't want to supply it. I don't want to be a part of it. They need to find rock bottom, and they need to find help. If we were talking about beds, solutions, I mentioned Ibogaine here once. They're talking about it at a national level finally. There are answers. We don't have to look far to see what doesn't work, yet we're going to put our foot in it anyway. I think I was told the last time we talked about this, well, we have to have one. No, we don't. We don't have to kill people. We don't have to. It's a choice, and it's your choice, and I hope you vote no. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public who'd like to address the council on this item? Please approach the podium.
My name is Steve Milks, 82 Alderwood Road. I'm also against this ordinance, and for many of the same reasons, that it's not a kind thing to give somebody that, when we saw this group of people that clearly cared about other people. And it seemed to me that the results that they were getting was a result of relationships that were created and coming from a position of empathy. When you give somebody the tool of their destruction, they know you don't care about them. It doesn't matter if it's clean or not. You're not being kind. And I know that it's good people that believe in that this is the right thing, but it is not compassionate to give people needles that are addicts. It's compassionate to care about them. It's compassionate to find recovery things, but it's not compassionate to give them needles. And I can tell you that it's a very, very unpopular it's not something that is supported in any of the wards. It's certainly not in Ward 3, I know. And it's because it doesn't make sense. And it doesn't help people, and it doesn't help the community. And it's a bad message to send to kids that it's illegal. That, we should be, as a city and as a society, we should be doing what is right. And this is not right. And so I ask you all to vote against it for the kids in our community, to show them what's right and what's wrong. And so please vote against this.
Thank you. If there's any other member of the public who'd like to address the council, please approach the podium.
Stephen Beal, 575 Johnson Road. I was at the workshop a couple of months ago when this topic was discussed. The public was permitted to participate, and Mr. Milks made an eloquent statement on that occasion. He's made another tonight, as has Mr. Chapman. And I disagree with their conclusion, but I don't doubt for a second their earnestness in bringing forth these arguments. The problem, the fundamental problem or failure of that position that these gentlemen are advocating is that you don't stop being an addict overnight. If you're an addict, you've been an addict for a while, and you're going to continue to be an addict until you get remedial treatment or counseling or various programs that will help withdraw you from this pattern of life. And in the meantime, if you're using dirty, infected needles, you may kill yourself in that period in between. So the safe syringe, the clean needle program, is a tool, but only one tool among others. At that last workshop a couple of months ago, I was impressed with Councilor Platz's statements urging programmatic treatment, involvement, and attempting to withdraw people from this habit and this way of life. That's a necessary adjunct to it. We have potentially 2 system suppliers that are to be approved with this ordinance if it is approved. And I would urge the council to keep the heat and the focus on those providers to ensure that they're doing as much as reasonably possible to withdraw people, to cause them to withdraw from this pattern of life. The council can't mandate a health care program. There are numerous legal and medical issues with that. But the council can indicate its desire that these system providers offer more than simply functional clean needles by way of programmatic support and the depth of treatment that's necessary to cause this behavioral pattern change. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's any other member of the public who'd like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium.
How's it going? My name is Noah Yarnovich. I live at 281 Old Danville. I guess I would just have, it's kind of twofold, but I'll kind of try to tie it together. But my main thing is that I, like many of you up here right now, recently ran for a spot up here on the city council. I didn't put forth my best effort. I had like a month to do it. Didn't turn out how I wanted, but I wanted to stay involved because some people would consider me a younger face in the community. I made sure that when I ran, I tried to represent both sides. I think we really need that. But one thing that I want to point out is that one thing that I talked to people about when I went to the 350, 400 doors I knocked in that short period of time was every single face I saw, I asked them about this program. I said, do you know anything about this? Every single person gave me a quizzical look. They said, no, I know nothing about this. Why do I know nothing about this? And I kind of, referenced the fact that Lewiston did a similar situation. Everybody kind of knows how that worked out with the Church of Safe Injection, things like that. We can't sit here and act like we don't know how that ended with it being closed and the 80,000 used needles they found in the basement because they weren't disposed of correctly. That's dangerous. That's terrifying. Someone who owns a business in this town, someone who lives in this town, wants to raise my kids in this town, that's scary. It really is. It's terrifying. And I think terrifying, scary, those were words that were used by every single person I talked to. I talked to Democrat, I talked to Republican, I talked to Independent, I talked to people who don't care about politics. Every person I mentioned this to was terrified because we all heard the stories of what happened over across the bridge. So that's the main point I want to bring forward is like, have we really, maybe we've had one open discussion, two open discussions. I'm not an expert on this. I'm not super well versed because I'm just kind of learning about it, trying to get into it also. But have we really talked to as many citizens as we possibly can on what they think about this? And I do want to bring this back to the fact that compassion is important. People that are struggling, that's an awful thing. And I think we need to help them. But is this the best way? Just because we sit here and say, well, it's a clean needle. That's all good and well that they're not going to get some horrible disease, but where does it end? Does this continue to snowball? What's next? Do we say, oh, if you're addicted to alcohol, we're going to provide, a space for people to give out alcohol. If we're addicted to this, we're going to give you this. Where does it end? I think it's a really slippery slope, and I think that we really need to spend more time talking to actual citizens about this and not just kind of say, well, we feel good about it. We're compassionate people, which I believe you all are. But what is the safety in this? Because I think people are starting to notice how dangerous this city is becoming. I really do. So I would ask you all to vote no on this, until we really talk to our citizens a little bit more about this. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's any other member of the public who'd like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium. Not seeing any. Public comment will be closed. Discussion by the council. Council Platt.
Sure, I'm happy to make a comment. I want to thank everyone for speaking on this issue. Obviously, we've been talking about this for quite a while since we put a moratorium on needle exchange syringe service providers in the last council. Again, I appreciate everyone's thoughts on this. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm going to support this ordinance, and I want to tell you why. I think I come at it from a different angle. I appreciate what Noah said. It's a slippery slope, and I can see how one may perceive it as a slippery slope. However, where I come from it differently is that what I see is a state that kind of put this on us, right? There's a state law, my understanding, that allows these SSPs to exist in municipalities. So if we do nothing today, then all of the worst fears that were just brought up there, there's absolutely no guardrails stopping an SSP from coming in, operating without any limitations. Right now, we have a cap in our ordinance of 2. So my fear is actually a no vote. A no vote to me is lawlessness, is chaos. I hear loud and clear what folks are saying. If we need more stringent guidelines on this, personally, I believe that would need to come in the future. I support passing this today. I am wide open for further discussion on changes to this ordinance if we see feedback loops here that are not what we anticipate, not what we want. Where my comfort level comes in on this ordinance, specific because I brought up multiple times my issues with litter. I have zero tolerance. I do not want to see these needles around the city. And if I do, I'm willing to act on that. But I feel confident that unlike other municipalities with ordinances, we have limited this to 2 service providers. Someone I believe brought up the Church of Safe Injection without making any comments about that organization as a whole. I think we did see the news. We saw what happened in Lewiston. It's not what anybody wants. So we've put in additional language such as service providers need to clean up within 250 feet of their brick and mortar locations every single day at the end of work. So therefore, if we did discover some operator such like the Church of Safe Injection with similar practices, we would have the teeth to go after that provider immediately for not being in accordance with this ordinance. So I know I'm going on and on here, but I will support this. I acknowledge that there are folks in this community that might want more regulation for this ordinance. I know in Lewiston there's a citizen initiative to try to pass a 1-to-1 needle exchange. I applaud the folks who are trying to use the political process to do that. But if we vote no today, next week an SSP could come in here and provide services. And if I'm wrong about that, I would love to have that conversation. Thank you.
So just, if I might, to clarify Council Platz's point, so it's clear to everyone how this works. So providing needles is unregulated in this state. Anybody can come in. So today, if some 18-year-old with a backpack and a skateboard wanted to zoom around downtown Auburn at 3 o'clock in the morning just handing out needles to people, they can do that. It's perfectly legal. There is a state program that's been referenced, and SSPs have to be certified, and there are a set of regulations attendant to that certification that they must follow, whether they're an SSP would operate in Auburn or in any other city. So one of the issues with adopting an ordinance is to prevent uncertified operators, which is the current state. And the second thing is, even if we have certified SSPs through the state that have to comply with all the state rules, our ordinance provides a significant number of additional regulations on top of that. So I just wanted to clarify, Council Platts is on the right track. I just want to make explicitly clear the construct of the current law regarding provision of needles. Councilor Duval.
Yeah, so I just want to vote that I also, for the reasons stated by Councilor Platts, I'm not going to restate them, that I plan to support this. I do have one clarification, though. Our ordinance does not allow a situation similar to the Church of Safe Injection.
Councilor Gary.
Thank you. Whoa. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In this new ordinance, when these businesses come in and apply, and if they're accepted, is their license deemed for a certain time limit, like a year, 2 years? If they are limited to a certain time limit, if we find the police or whoever monitors their progress or situation, if they find that they have violated, we then can choose as a council, right, not to renew their license.
So that would be correct, but to clarify that a bit, so as Council Platts referenced, there would be up to 2 licensees. The ordinance is regulated, as is other business licenses in the city, that the city has the ability to take action for violations, including termination of the license, and that can happen at any time. The city does not have to wait until the license period expires. Under the ordinance, licenses would be issued for a year, and then they would then need to be renewed. But I think that the city has the ability to do the appropriate inspections and take the appropriate action should there be violations of the ordinance.
Thank you.
Councilor Cowan?
Thank you. I too, I'm going to pass this for the same reasons that Councilor Platts and Duvall have mentioned. I'd like to add in a few other things. Just one clarification. No, I agree with you that we have to be, we want to make sure that this is solid around this piece, but you mentioned a slippery slope, and then you mentioned, would we start passing out alcohol? And I think that's it raises an issue that I think it's important to highlight. We're not passing out illegal drugs. We're passing out syringes which you can purchase legally from any pharmacy. So it would be more akin that we're passing out a cup or a bottle, and then someone have to fill it. So I think I think that's important, because I think where a lot of people may be concerned is that we're passing out the illegal substances. We're not. It's an issue of trying to help prevent consequences of someone's addiction, of then getting subsequent illnesses because of using dirty needles and sharing that with individuals, and that spreads the issues. Secondly, there is plenty of data that we've seen, and we've had testimony here, that these programs are effective in actually reducing the risk of spread of HIV and hepatitis. Yes, there have been some outbreaks in this state. They largely correlate with when the syringe programs in the regions stopped for a period of time. So I think, we can look at that data, and I'm happy to sit down and talk with folks, but I think it's important to put those facts out there. They don't lead to increased rates. They largely have been demonstrated to reduce the risk as intended. And finally, I'd like to point out that most of the people that certified programs, this becomes an opportunity to get to exactly with the concerns that our residents tonight spoke to, and I appreciate their thoughts. Drug addiction is a lifelong struggle, and it takes years of support and relationship building with people who are showing them the compassion that Mr. Milks eloquently talked about. That's actually, from my perspective, it's not the primary option, not the primary purpose of this, but it is an opportunity from the people who we have heard from in terms of what they're doing, is that they're trying. It's an opportunity where someone is coming back and they can potentially build that relationship. They can talk to them about eventually getting into services, and they have actually testified to us about that happening. So I think it's important to think of this as one of many programs out there, and I don't agree that this is something that we're enabling, when in fact there's a lot of data that shows that if they're coming in, we're actually getting them a little bit closer to this, for them making that final choice to get treatment at a faster rate than if they were doing it on their own. Thanks.
Further comments or questions? Councilor Walker.
Yeah, I got just a couple comments there. I do not support this program. I haven't from day one. And the other thing I'd like to bring up is us councilors sit here and we talk about these people that may get these things free, but they can go to the drugstore anytime they want and they can get them. We have all kinds of drugstores in the neighborhood. So why don't we just let them go to the drugstores and get all they want to buy? They sell them all the time at the drugstores. I'd like to see all these people that need these needles go to the drugstores and buy them. And that would probably be the more sensible thing. That we wouldn't be giving needles to people that we cannot be guaranteed that they're not going to use that needle and pass it on to the next guy, or throw it on a counter somewhere where you could go along and stick it in your wrist, your arm, your elbow, and others on the street that you can walk on. So if you feel comfortable with that, the next time I see a couple on the sidewalk or something, I'll call you. You can come and pick them up, because nowheres in this are we forcing these people to go around to parks to clean up after they get done dirtying them up with the needles. And there are plenty of them needles around. You just have to be there at the time to see them. And they're around, trust me, folks, they're around. And if you have any religion in your body at all, you will not supply anybody with these needles or any other kind of drug that you can stick into a needle, or alcohol as well. I'm against it all, so I won't vote in favor of this.
Any other questions or comments from the council? The council ready for the question? Vote will be by roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Butler?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
No.
Counselor Platts?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
No.
Counselor Cowan?
Yes.
Counselor Duval?
Yes.
4 having voted in the affirmative and 2 in the negative, the motion is adopted at first reading. The next item is Resolve 0306152026, adoption of the Auburn Housing Production Targets 2026 to 2030. As background for the public, this is a housing goals developed by the Ad Hoc Housing Committee with the assistance of HR&A, who was the consultant on the state housing needs plan. This is a set of housing targets or goals before the council for their adoption. This will be used for a number of purposes, but most predominantly in the comprehensive planning process. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Geary. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Cowan. Does any member of the public would like to address the council on this? Please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any. Public comment is closed. Discussion by the council. Council Platt.
Thank you. I had a question about how this differs, or what we've learned this study compared to the last time a study like this was conducted. Are there changes in the numbers, changes in our outlook, changes in our plans moving forward as to how we accomplish 1,300 plus units?
So I'm not aware of a prior study having been done. I think that the impetus for this was a statewide housing needs study, which, while it was quite detailed, was not specific to a community. And they broke the state up into 3 regions, and we were in the central region, which went from Freiburg to Carrabassett Valley to Lincoln. And so while the approaches were quite good, it didn't really inform us much about Auburn. So we engaged, the council will recall, we engaged H&RA to look further into that, to try to identify not only the number of units, but the types of units that would be necessary to meet the needs, both the past underproduction and the future needs over this time. So I don't know that there's anything to compare it against. The legislature recently passed a statute regarding reporting by municipalities about things like number of buildings permits issued, number of starts, those things, and Auburn, as well as other municipalities, is now reporting. So I think that will help inform us how we're measuring up against the study. But I think, is to the second part of your question, I think some of the policies and land use decisions that the Comprehensive Planning Committee is making takes into account these needs and what type of policies need to be in place in order to help achieve these goals. Other comments or questions by the council? Representative Edwards? Nope, sorry, I thought you had your hand up.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
This is more out of curiosity, my own understanding. I was looking at the production phasing, and we're adopting the targets are based off the state of Maine's recommended methodology, 20% in the first year, and I'm okay with putting that in as a target, but is that realistic? Or do you guys project that there's going to be challenges? And with that, is it, I mean, this is just a result, but it's a 20 and then 5, 5. Why not 10, 10 and beyond? So I was just curious how the background of the decision for those methodology.
Well, the methodology was set statewide by the state through their study. To your question, this is going to be a significant challenge, not only here in Auburn, but every place. I think that the most important part of this is the identification of the housing types, right? I mean, previously we were operating on some semblance of a number based on the state study, and one could get to the end of the period and say, great, we got all 1,300, but it's only one housing type, and we haven't really overall solved the problem. So I think it's a set of goals. I think in the best case scenario, this is a very significant challenge, not only for Auburn, but for other cities to try to meet.
Thanks, and I totally agree with I love how it's broken out, very clear and focused on the right type of housing to meet the needs.
Any other questions or comments by the council? Council ready for the question? The vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 6 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. Yep. Thank you, Councilor Gary. The next item is Order 5806152026, authorizing the city manager to execute the collective bargaining agreement with the Auburn Fraternal Order of Police, Patrol, and Detective Unit, effective 7/1/2026. Is there a motion?
Motion to move.
Moved by Councilor Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Who was? Seconded by Councilor Duval. If there's any member of the public who'd like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comment will be closed. Discussion by the council. Council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? 5 having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative, the motion is adopted. We'll move on to reports. So a few items. Councilor Walker and I were able to represent the council at the adult education graduation a week or so ago. It's always a very emotional time. There was 18 graduates, and to listen to some of the stories of the difficulties that people have to overcome to face this challenge, go back to school and earn their high school diploma or GED is quite impressive. And Councilor Walker and I were quite happy to be able to attend. An update, the Lewiston Auburn Railroad Committee, Corporation, relative to Auburn, recently finalized the authorization of a land transfer and allocation of funding for the design and permitting on the piece of property for an expansion of the intermodal. This is a piece of landlocked property to the back of the intermodal and will help us do an expansion of the intermodal to bring additional economic development activities to the city and to the region. The solid waste curbside collection Q&A session, the first one was here at City Hall. It was great attendance by the public. There were about 30 people, had some very good questions. The staff, we had a couple staff members there taking down the questions and the responses, and so the city will be posting an FAQ to help people understand the situation. There will be 2 more of these Q&A sessions on June 25th at 6 o'clock at the 6th Street Congregational Church, and there'll be another one on June 30th at 6 p.m. at Rowley's Diner. And the last item, I appreciate all of the effort for the Tailwinds and Tailpipes event that took place at the airport this weekend. So thanks to the transportation director, the economic development, folks from the police department that helped with parking, and all of the groups. It was quite a turnout. I arrived about a half hour after it started, and they had already parked 175 cars, and they were lined up coming in. It was great display, antique car display, and lots of interesting aircraft, and I really appreciate people from all over the state that came in for the fly-in with their own aircraft and would pull up to the pad, and they would take kids on rides for no charge. So really great event, and I hope we see it here again next year. Councilor Cowan?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of announcements. First, we have a homelessness committee meeting tomorrow morning, 9:30 to 11 at 121 Mill Street, if anyone would like to join us for that. But more important event later in the week is the grand opening for the Auburn Resource Center, also at 121 Mill Street, from 1:30 to 4:35-ish, I guess. So I encourage folks to come out for the ribbon cutting, but also to get tours of the facility. And then at 3 o'clock, there's going to be a documentary film called Building Hope and Ending Homelessness in Maine, and a panel discussion to follow. So thanks.
That's this Friday?
Thursday. Sorry, this Thursday.
Excuse me, this Thursday.
This Thursday.
Thank you.
Yeah, it'd be helpful to tell you the day. It's this Thursday from 1:30 to 4:35.
Thank you, Councilor Duvall.
Yeah, just the appointments committee will be meeting a week from today. So hopefully we will continue to get people. And I also want to just flag, if you're interested in serving, we just created a new committee. So, we'll look for applications for that. Also, comp plan is moving along. We are now looking at implementation plans for that, which is a very interesting conversation. So that seems to be moving on quite nicely.
Thank you. Council Butler?
Nothing this week.
Council Walker?
Nothing today, please.
Council Platt?
I just wanted to give a quick thank you to the Auburn School Department, and congratulations on the passing of the referendum. I know that we talked about it earlier today, but I just wanted to reiterate the fact that the school budget passed with a nearly 70% approval rate. I think that says 2 things about this community. I think it says, one, again, congratulations to the school department for proposing, I believe, was a 4.3% budget increase. But what a lot of people don't realize is that along with it came with increases in revenue. And so the actual change to the taxpayer was only 1%. And so I think the fact that this was supported by 70% of the community says that, one, we've got a school department that is doing a great job with their budgeting and is very aware of the financial pressures today in the world, and also that we have a community that supports public education. I'm mostly saying this to reiterate that final point. I hope that anyone listening to this understands the value of having a community that supports its public education system. Right now, sitting on the school committee and attending all the school board meetings, it feels like the Auburn School Department has a very good brand right now. And it feels that way because 70% of our constituents support it. So congratulations to everyone involved. I hope that we can continue this momentum, and I can say that the day after the budget passed, the school is, just like the city is, ready for next year's budget. The school is already moving, already looking ahead. They've identified what they feel the biggest challenges will be for next year, and they're moving forward for another year of hopefully responsible and reasonable budgets. So thank you to everyone involved with that.
Thank you, Representative Doolahai.
I just want to say thank you for the certification plaque. It's been an honor being a student representative, and I hope to see big changes in Auburn throughout my years of living. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Representative Edwards?
I just wanted to congrats Mubarak, and school's over, so not much to say.
Mr. Manager?
Yeah, to build on Brennan, the school's over, so that really shifts the city as far as summer programming. And not only that, but the types of calls for service that we then also shift to deal with. Just know that the team is ramping up. We're making those adjustments. Summer programming, this was the last drop-in center day at the PAL Center. They will shift tomorrow to their summer hours. We will be providing breakfast and lunch programming out of the PAL Center. So that'll be a regular busy operation. I did take notes, as the mayor said, regarding Winter Street. We hadn't heard some of those parking issues. If you recall, the parking center's phase 2 of that project is to address where 7 Chestnut Street was taken down. That'll be the future parking lot for the PAL Center. So I'm not really sure what's driving that. We've seen a lot of use down in the gully for the basketball court as well as futsal court. Futsal court just started a program within the last week, I believe week or two. They're having about 30, 35 young people that are doing a program there that might be impacting some of that parking. So we'll have the team out. We'll go out and address that and see how best can we manage it. We consistently have at this time of the year, in the beginning of the year, we have late night park issues in Chestnut Street at the gully. We will we'll work with the PD on addressing that and focusing on that. Also within our summer programming shifting, the park rangers will begin soon at Lake Grove Park. If you recall, we have park rangers there that help distribute access to the kayaks, canoes. We are having already a great turnout at Lake Grove. The new parking is in place there, as well as some new accommodations at Lake Grove. So just a great use of that facility. Summer camp rec program is also be launching soon. We're at full capacity for that program. We have summer movie schedule that will be coming out soon. We're looking at expanding that in different areas within the community. So we'll have plenty of opportunities for the community to come out. And just a plug for, please watch for Auburn Community Band, which will be performing on Wednesday nights at Festival Plaza. So we're looking forward to that. Sometime this summer, we'll be getting some sidewalk renovations from 186 Main Street to Court Street. So that entire sidewalk will be based on the CIP council. So that work will be underway as soon as the bid goes out and we start working on securing a vendor for that. So a lot of summertime programming shifts, but just want to give you an update on the action that we'll be taking.
Thank you. We'll move on to the second open session of the evening. If there's any member of the public who'd like to address the council on items that are not on tonight's agenda, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, the open session is closed. For the people in attendance, the council is able to take up the executive session during the work session, so there'll be no further executive session this evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Council
Second.
Walker, seconded by Council Cowan. All those in favor? The council will be adjourned.